After jumping back into the game recently, I figured it is the perfect time to make a guide for beginners. This game is packed with complex mechanics and stats, and while the combat and animations are pretty good for their time, the real highlight is the variety of items, stats and build options. So this video will help anyone looking to understand the key mechanics, to create their own builds or follow mine. Sacred 2 was developed during an era when chance to hit was a common game stat. This mechanic has largely disappeared in modern RPGs, making it easy to overlook while playing Sacred 2. In this game, your attack value determines your chance to hit an opponent, while your defense value determines their chance to hit you, and the same counts for enemies. Pressing C opens the attribute and skill menu, revealing a section that displays the information about the last few enemies you fought. This section includes details such as their armor, damage type, and both their chance to hit you and your chance to hit them. Monitoring this information is crucial. If your hit chance drops below 100%, you need to invest in items that either increase your attack value or decrease your enemy's defensive value, both of which improves your chance to hit. Additionally, there is a stat called chance that opponents cannot evade attacks, which despite its more complex calculations, ultimately increases your hit chance. Also be aware that attack and defense values vary significantly between normal enemies and bosses. Additionally, many characters possess permanent or temporary buffs that increase your attack value, such as the combat alert skill of the Temple Guardian. Another important point is that the attack value only applies to weapon-based combat arts and basic attacks. Any combat art whose damage doesn't get affected by your equipped weapon falls into the spell category. You can easily find out which is which by equipping a weapon and an empty slot, and switch back and forward. Spells always hit their target, but the damage they deal is influenced by your spell intensity and the enemy spell resistance. The higher your spell intensity, the greater the chance is that your spells will overcome the enemy spell resistance and deal full damage. But you don't only need to overcome the spell resistance. The spell damage also gets reduced by the armor type and amount the enemy has, as does regular damage. A must-have skill for any spell-focused build is Ancient Magic, which increases the damage of spell-based combat arts while decreasing enemy spell resistance and immunities. Next, let's talk about armor. It serves as the second line of defense, after your defense value. The game features 5 different types of elements: physical, fire, ice, magic, and poison. Which means you get an armor type for each one of them. Every type of damage is calculated individually against your or the enemy's armor value. For instance, if a weapon or combat art deals 2 or more types of damage, each damage type is calculated individually against the corresponding armor resistance, and then combined into a final value, which is subtracted from the health value. And I also need to quickly mention here that weapon-based combat arts get imbued with the element of your weapon. So keep that in mind. Utilizing the information about your enemies, which you can access in this menu, allows you to guard against their attacks and deal significantly more damage by choosing a damage type that they have little or no armor against. The main ways to increase your armor include socketing relics into the orb or using sigils that got added with the community patch, which also provide various set bonuses on top of the armor value. Another great way to get an overall armor boost is by using one of those amulets. If you wear 2 to 3 or socket them in your items, you will have a decent starting value for higher difficulties. Which then can be complemented with the right relics and sigils. There are also certain armor pieces and weapons that come with significant armor values, such as the Link's chestplate for the Dryad or the Serpent Gaze staff. A few combat arts also affect the player's armor values, such as the Ancient Bark for the Dryad, the Runes of Protection for the Dragon Mage, or the Crystal Skin buff for the High Elf. Additionally, the Toughness skill significantly boosts your armor values and provides damage mitigation once it's mastered. The other skill that boosts the value significantly is of course the armor lore. The main stats to deal with the enemy's armor values are the reduction in physical armor, which yes, it's only available for the physical stat, not fire damage for example. But physical armor is also the most common one. And the other stat is the chance to bypass armor, which seems to be only available on a few weapons in the game, but can definitely be worth it. So let me sum it up. If you ignore the two stats I just mentioned, then the basics are this. If we look at this enemy for example, we can see that he has a lot of physical and fire resistance, but low magic and low poison values. So using a weapon or combat art with a high amount of poison or magic damage will of course deal more damage. And if we look closer, then we can see that this enemy doesn't have any ice resistance. So if you are using an ice-based weapon or combat art, like this one for example, the damage will increase significantly. And the same principles also apply to your enemies. Look at their main damage type, for example magic here, then equip relics or sigils that give you the right resistance. It's also worth mentioning that only the slot in the upper right corner of the orb is active. Your armor won't increase by putting relics or sigils in the other slots. They are only there so you can easily swap between different loadouts, depending on the enemy you are facing. The only exception to this are the set bonuses you get from sigils. They still apply even if they aren't equipped in the active slot. There is a lot more to cover, like how the cooldowns work, attributes and skills, which I will go over in the second part of this guide. So if you don't want to miss out, then don't forget to subscribe. And if you found this guide helpful, then please leave a like.